We are going to graph this trig function. We are graphing cosine. So remembering cosine's parent graph that starts at the high point, one full cycle in 360 degrees, where it crosses the axis, and low point. In red is the cosine parent graph. We will deal with stretches and shrinks always first. So this 3 is a vertical stretch. It is also the amplitude. So the amplitude is 3. So it's going to go up to a y value of 3, down to a y value of -3. So in blue, we are just graphing the vertical stretch because of the coefficient of 3, which is the vertical stretch. In green, we will deal with the 2, and the 2 is a horizontal shrink, which means we will divide the x's by 2. So we will take each x value and divide it by 2. So the x value at 90 is now at 45. The x value that's at 180, divide that by 2, is now at 90. Undo that point that I just put there. It should be down here. Divide 270 by 2, which is 135. And divide 360 by 2, which is 180. And divide 0 by 2, which I didn't do at the beginning, stays at 0. So in green is the horizontal shrink. And then in black is the vertical shift of 1. So we take what's in green and move it up 1 unit, so it goes up to 4. This point that's at 0, the y value, is now at 1. This one that's at -3 is at -2. This one that is at 0 goes to 1. This one that's at 4 goes, or at 3, goes up to 4. And what is in black is your final graph. Now we have 2 things also to talk about, which is your period. The period is 1 full length of that cycle. It's the horizontal length, which is 180. The other day we gave you the formula that said the period is equal to the normal period, which the normal period for cosine is 360. Divide it by that coefficient there, which is 2, to give us 180. The phase shift, there is no phase shift because it was not moved left or right at all. But the other way to find the phase shift, which we did not do on Friday, but this is another way to find your phase shift, you take what is inside the parentheses, which is 2x, set it equal to 0, and solve for x. So another way to find your phase shift is to take your what's inside the parentheses, set it equal to 0, solve it for x. So we will do this other example, which has lots of things involved. It has, first of all, sine. So the sine curve, parent graph, is again what we are showing here in red. We once again do all of our stretches and shrinks before we do any movement. So we have the negative, which that negative is a reflection over the x-axis. So we are going to reflect it over the x-axis. That is what we now have in green. The amplitude, again, amplitude is always a positive number, which that is a 1, so the amplitude is positive 1. Inside the grouping symbol, you have this too. So that is a horizontal shrink. We are going to divide x's by 2. So take each x and again divide it by 2. So 0 divided by 2 is 0. 90 divided by 2 is 45. 180 divided by 2 is 90. 270 divided by 2, 135. And 360 divided by 2, 180. So now what we have there in blue is after we horizontally shrink it by 2. To find your phase shift again, this is what we talked about with the last example. Take what's inside your grouping symbol, (2 times x minus 30, set that equal to 0, and solve for x. And so x will equal 30 when you solve that for x. What this does, your phase shift is 30, which means move it right 30, in this case 30 degrees. So 0 moves to the right 30 degrees, which is before 45. So we will plot a point at 30. It's getting to be a mess. 45, move it to the right 30. That puts it at 75. Undo that point because it's in the wrong spot. It should be down here. So that's at 75. 90, move to the right 30. So that's at 120. And that is now at 0. And the blue curve, move it to the right 30. So this is at 135. So move it to the right 30. It's now at 165. And 180 to the right 30 is at 210. Now what we have here in black is not the final graph, but we're pretty darn close. And we last have to deal with the vertical shift. So that graph is going to be in purple, which will be the final graph, +4. Move everything up 4 units. So this point is at, the y value is 0. Move it up 4. It's up here at 4. This is at -1. Move it up 4. It goes to 3. This point is at 0. Move it up 4. This point is at 4, or is at 1. Move it up 4. It goes to 5. And this point is at 0. Move it up 4. Goes to 4. And that we have in purple is the final graph with the x values of 210. I'm going to label these in purple also. These are the ones that are important to us. I'm not really, this one goes there. I'm not in line very well. That one goes there and that one goes there. So there's another example with everything in it. The vertical shift is that +4. So the vertical shift is 4. The period, once again, is the normal period, which is 360 divided by that coefficient, which is 2. So our period length is 180 degrees.